energetically, some physically, that are peering now into your dimension with a greater level of attention, with a greater level of focus. These types of gatherings, as we have described, will draw many beings to you. These are beings that are not just interesting temporary beings. These are beings you can form very potent relationships with. Many of them you already are in relationship with. As it has been said, this is not your first time here, incarnationally speaking, for any of you. Traveling in that way reveals your own soul's journey to you through revisiting certain places and through revisiting certain people who have taken on new forms. So all of this is a echo in a certain sense, yet it is fresh in another. And in that way you bring the past with you, yet you transform it in a manner that is appropriate for your present and in a manner that supports the creation of your preferred future. In that way you are masters of time when conscious of such things. There is a particular network of inner earth consciousness that is in particular taking notice of all of you. You would understand them as a council that exists with the inner earth that is made up of 3 major groups. One group is known as Nagas. They are, in a sense, reptilian-like beings. They are slightly more serpentine by your own standards. They are snake-like, almost. A certain variety of, you could say, reptilian consciousness, but of course, it is not as humanoid as others. Not all of these are bipedal beings. One other group you understand as Agarthans. Another you would describe as Telonesians, or Lemurians. More appropriately, the descendants of the Lemurians. There are now, in a new way, conversations that are being had within these councils that involve introducing new species into the council, granting them certain levels of representational and ambassadorial presence. And this is a part of the open contact process. You must remember that. It is not just with your people we must, in a sense, negotiate with. It is also those that extra-dimensionally exist. And when we say negotiate, what do we mean? We mean understanding what is happening in your world, what is appropriate for your world, and taking that into very deep consideration with regards to how we approach contact. So we have to shift, oftentimes, different measures within our protocols based upon what's happening on the Earth Collective. So in that way, it's a bit of a dance, you could say. So, we have this with you. With other forms of consciousness, like the ones we have mentioned, pertinent to this council, because they are telepathic, we are able to have these types of conversations with them now. And as those conversations continue to go as they are going, and as the shared experience of culture and teaching continues, we will become, in many ways, a more integrated part of your inner earth civilization. This will translate as our energies not only coming down from above, but also rising up beneath you, expressing in your plant kingdom, expressing in your mineral kingdom, animal kingdom, human kingdom. In a way, this allows for us to understand you all more physically before we interact with you physically. Because the inner earth perspective of you, in many ways, is a more densified perspective of you, yet it is seen from a more non-physical point of view, paradoxically. So we get to see the densest representation of yourselves, we get to understand that, and we are able to see that from not only our perspective, but the perspective that we will be given through contact with the inner earth councils. So these are rather exciting times. This is one of the reasons why mountains are becoming particularly important. It was mentioned, casually perhaps, that all of these mountains are a part of a type of mountain-like earth-based constellation. This is true. There are networks that run deep beneath your planet. Some of them intersect with oceans, underwater, under earth oceans. So Only certain forms of life can physically survive there. If you are human, certain, you could say, supernatural abilities are required to navigate them, holding the breath for prolonged periods of time, seeing in darkness, these types of things. Being able to regulate body temperature, these are all variables that would be needed for some of these excursions. For extra-dimensional species that have physicality to them, this is a walk in the park. It's very simple. So humans have explored these places before. These are pertinent to your golden ages on Earth. For fun, many people would explore the inner Earth terrain. There were certain parts that perhaps some would dare not go down. Nevertheless, these places were explored. Temples were constructed. Civilizations made. These civilizations, the temples constructed, had multiple purposes. It involved the secret underground ascension of a particular group of civilizations, and it also represented shelter. There were certain cataclysmic phenomenon on these earlier stages of the Earth drama. So, these underground shelters and cities, and eventually civilizations, were constructed. Things get rather different the deeper you go down. There are certain, you could say, both externally influenced and internally experienced glimpses that you have of inner Earth. There are movies on your world about journeys to the center of the Earth. All types of things are encountered, almost as if it is the place where your socks go when you are doing a load of laundry. All types of things will show up. Airplanes, dinosaurs, humans that seem to have just wandered into the place. Beings that would appear dreamlike to you, yet more physical than a person you could ever encounter on the surface. A level of physicality that to your people is somewhat unreal, if you can imagine this. Physical beings made of materials that are of your earth, yet are also things you have not seen. Body types can grow. Beings within inner earth can live extraordinary amounts of time because of the pressure. The more pressurized the environment, the more integral the DNA. We are sharing this with you because, as many of you have experienced, there are reality overlay projections and experiences that are taking place. You're beginning to see how aware these beings are of you. Some of you are having strong awarenesses of this in different ways. As we have said, these are connections that can last a lifetime. So if you find you're connecting with a certain group, a certain civilization, really strive, if you wish, to cultivate that, to do just that, cultivate that. So we thank you all for receiving this. If you like, you may present your questions to us. We are happy to address whatever it is that you deem relevant and exciting for your path.
Sure, I would like to start. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
In this beautiful, magical space. My first question, can you detect Hathor presence?
Of course,
here?
yes.
Okay.
We specifically are detecting a variety of dragon presences, avian presences. There are solar presences here, angelic, and also what you would call Hathor energies. These are here. There are many realities because of the number of you coming together. So the groups, the beings that you work the most with, because of your bubble reality, which you're all likely feeling quite amazingly, because of this, it's like all of those worlds are able to overlap. So because many of you work with different beings across time, issues within the timeline can actually be healed through this, because you're bringing different cultures from different parts of the earth with shared karma together. It allows for many things to happen that brings greater goodness to those groups. It also allows for all of their abilities to work together through all of you working together. And as you work with these types of beings, as it is said on your world, you are like those whom you hang around with. You become like these beings. You take on their qualities, and in the group space, downloads from them becomes more immediate. So we feel many things, Hathor being one of them.
Would
Ryokah.
Greetings.
How are you, my brother?
We are well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Had a question for you about the ET sighting that the channel experienced last night.
Yes, yes. This was in a certain sense arranged. We're going to share something personal about him you may find humorous, because it is in many ways further assisting in the contextualization of the experience. So it's both funny and it will add more detail to the nature of why and how this happened.
Okay.
As a personal moment of not losing joy and inspiration. Imagine a moment where joy or inspiration could temporarily feel lost, disappointment, something like this. This was one path he could have gone into through the experience, and it was, in a certain sense, a lesson for him to recognize. One moment, we are actually having to sedate him. We are finding as we talk about him, he becomes more active. One moment, please. All right, we shall continue. Essentially, the channel wanted to smoke the herbs that he smokes. And when he sat down outdoors under the full moon to do so, he was surprised to find he had no more of this plant. At first, he was astonished because he thought there's no way. All of that is gone. It does not make sense. I don't have memory of actually doing all of this. I could have sworn there was more in there. Well, we're going to narrate his mind, essentially. Well, this sort of stinks. This is kind of unfortunate, but there's something else for me to experience. There's something else for me here to enjoy, to do, to take in. And in that moment, the sounds of airplane propellers, helicopter-like propellers, was heard in the distance, and the vehicle he described to all of you was then observed. So as you can see, it is for him a lesson to recognize that just because one expectation was not met does not mean the fun, the experience, the mystery cannot continue. So this was, in terms of his own psychology and understanding, relevant. However, it also is reflective of more collective themes. This, of course, represents beings from these civilizations reminding you that they're aware of you, that there are multiple layers of Earths. To you, it's like you're on one Earth, but think of 20 Earths, all contained one within the other, within the other, within the other, within the other. These are different layers, different levels of Earths. On many of your spiritual dimensions of the social media, there are depictions of what we would describe as an artistic rendering of a super Earth, an Earth that possesses continents that seem to not exist, an Earth that seems to be much larger and has hidden lands. This, in many ways, has been associated with the flat Earth movement. We're not necessarily validating that. It's an interesting perspective. However, we encourage you to think more multi-dimensionally, not so two-dimensionally. If it's a flat plane, you only have so much to work with, yes? If it is a sphere, you are able to move in many greater directions of multidimensionality. So how you perceive your planet will have an effect on your planet. Therefore, remember, we're not saying it's this, but your Earth could be perhaps something like a giant Merkaba or a dodecahedron. See your Earth in different ways. You will see the collective of the Earth change. This is Agarthan technology we are sharing with all of you here. Specifically, this is from that dimension of the Council. So when you are fine-tuning your sense of the perfect version of Earth, give that Earth a genuine structure. It does not have to necessarily be spherical. So remember, even the Earth, which has a great objective description, is still a projected experience. Therefore, you can create many You might call them distortions or effects that can really shift your experience of Earth in a way that moves you closer towards whatever that ideal is. These civilizations that have learned to occupy these extra dimensions of Earth are doing quite well. And they wish to share that with all of you. That is a genuine thing that is occurring. Many of you have had the sensing that in other dimensions you are connected to lineages of what you might describe as royalty. Many of you have felt this, seeing yourselves in positions of influence and power. For many of you, this is Atlantis. And through extension, colonies that Atlantis had formed. The realities that you feel that, in a certain way, are more council-based, or more collectively based, where everyone's working together. It's not necessarily one ruler or one person of influence, it's a group. This is more of the Lemurian theme. This is more of the Lemurian connection. So a blending is going to take place. Imagine a council where everyone is the ruler of their own reality. For example, that would represent a blending of this. Instead of every person just being a child of heaven and earth, they are the fully manifested God self in a council with other gods. This is more or less what you're all beginning to move into. Through recognizing the divine with one another, you can summon that council around you. This is an extension of it. If you tune into the auric field of this group, you will likely find that you are surrounded by many beings that are listening in, just as you observe on your televisions. Congress meeting, and there are many people filling the seats, many people listening in. That is akin to what you are creating here in a way that perhaps is unexpected for you, yet it yields that effect because these conversations we described are happening. What you're doing here in many ways is your voice in relationship to what you would like to see. With these songs, with these teachings, with this interaction, many things are said. You're only saying so much with what you can perceive. You are saying so much more on the level that most of you usually do not perceive. So, we thank you for sharing this with many of the species here. They are curious now about you, as we have said. So, feel free to astrally scan into the environment when you feel called to and see what may be present with you. You will find some things, if you look at them, they may at first be similar to just an image of the mind, but quickly it may leap into your experience. You'll find it will multidimensionally activate as you focus upon it. So use the astral vision. As we have said, it's about seeing without seeing. The simplest way would be to imagine you have an extra eye literally on your forehead. Open it up. And both project what you would expect to see, whilst remaining open to that which you cannot see or predict. Let those two things blend. You have the visual advantage of knowing what a certain environment is like, yet if you've never been there, being dependent on that perspective will limit you. Therefore, you must remain open to what the environment wishes to share with you. Project into whatever reality you find you wish to connect with. And in these instances, use that open third eye to scan these environments, to even, like you have a drone that you can project through the third eye, descend down into your earth. Find those tunnels. Let the drone move through them. Go past the water. Go so far deep into the ocean that it's like you emerge on the other side of your planet, as many of you were told when you were young. Yet, of course, it won't be the other side of your planet you emerge on. It would literally be, to you, another dimension. If you go deep enough into the ocean, the water behaves like a portal. There will be certain beings that are adapted to it so they can withstand it, so you may see beings dwelling there. Nevertheless, the deepest parts, because of the blending of pressure, the blending of darkness, a type of aquatic black hole-like vortex is created. It doesn't quite eat everything, as many of you project onto black holes, but it is like a door into another dimension of Earth. So, like we said, these maps, these 2D maps that show a large fantastical Earth with many continents. This is representing the Earths nestled within one another. So, eventually, the Atlanteans and Lemurians will grant you physical access to their worlds because they are physical like you. These other versions of Earth can be experienced. For some of you, further in the timeline, it may happen in bizarre ways if it does happen. So, there's only so much we can say about that. But imagine you get invited to go on a vacation. Yet, once you get to the location, it is somehow very different, more different than you could have expected. And it's almost as if you're invited into another world. For some of you, this may be the case. This is a very special type of parallel reality shifting that we're describing. It's not necessarily common, but it represents two versions of Earth that are of very different qualities overlapping. And in this instance, it's two human versions of Earth. Your version of Earth and that of the Atlanteans and that of the Lemurians. So in a certain way, it's like they can intercept your experience of the timeline and in some instances physically bring you to theirs. They are extra-dimensional, yes, in many ways, but you must understand to them they are physical. To you they're extra-dimensional up until the point where they materialize. That's when they become physical, which they can do through those points of, you could say, Earth intersection, where one version of Earth and another come together. So, we thank you for sharing this question because it has brought out some interesting answers and, as you can see, interesting phenomenon. The channel has learned more about himself. We have learned a great deal through all of you.
Are we going to get him to sing?
One moment, we'll wake him up a little bit. Let's see. He's thinking about it. He may do it. It's feeling probable for him.
Does he want to hold the skull?
That would be a rather auspicious combination.
Does he want accompanying toning?
What he is advising is for him to create first a space for himself to sing and to express whatever types of vocalizations are appropriate or pleasing for his level of creation in this world. From there, once something perhaps reminiscent to music is established, then you may begin to come in with
We got faith in.
different complementary sounds and sounds that bring the creation in different directions. That was his wording, not ours. When silence fills the air and it feels like no one's there, just open. This is fun. I'm feeling activated. Just open your eyes up to the skies and you'll see what you've been dreaming of. You'll see what you've been dreaming of. Hidden helpers coming up from above. Infinite dreams with infinite love. We thank you for receiving that co-creation. We thank you for creating a space for him to sing.
You.
And we thank you for the assistance. We hand our friend to you. We thank you. We have enjoyed this interaction. There shall be more, of course. Our love unconditionally to you all. Continue to thrive in the ways that you do. And we are, of course, sending support and our assistance in many ways. Continue to enjoy.
Blessings.
Thank you, Ryokah.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. That was really like I feel like my voice different. That was a very personal session in a lot of ways. Yeah, through that. Thank you. That was really great.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I think so
That's
too.
really